Hey, baby. Hi, I'm Lukai. It is very early. It's currently 5:31 a.m. I woke up because of my chronic nightmares. They scare me. I'm gonna wake up and tell you how I got a 36 on the ACT. See you soon, baby. Hello, uglies. I want to do a video about how I got a 36 on the ACT. And this is my son. His name is Belyeet. Because I've watched a few how I got a 36 on the ACT videos, and my problem with those is they're all done by really smart individuals. Like, you can tell as soon as you open the video when they're all like, hello, I got a 36 on the ACT. Look at my slew of awards I have on my back wall here. It's like someone making a skincare routine video and they have perfect skin because of genetics and they're just like, drink water. And you're just like,
okay, Susan, you don't need to rub it in.
So my sub scores, I'll put them right here. I got a 36 in English, a 36 in math, a 35 in reading, and a 35 in science. And I also took writing. That one I did fine on. I got a 9. And that was my first time doing the ACT with writing. So in this video, I'm just going to talk about everything I did to help myself succeed. But disclaimer, I'm dumb. So I'm sure my advice isn't going to work for everybody. I do have some good tips that I'm sure will help, but then I also have some good tips that worked for me and might just be really bad advice. But I'm just going to give it to you straight how I did it, and you can take this information how you would like to. Let's get started. Tip number 1. Get lots of sleep and eat before you take the test. You want your brain to be at full capacity. I typically don't allow myself to do that. I like torturing myself. So I slept like 6 hours. I didn't go to sleep until 1 because I was panicking. Please don't be like that. I know everyone's going to tell you that, but it's important. I'll start by talking about the most important things you can do when you're preparing for the test, and then I'll go through each section, English, math, reading, and science, and give little tips on how I did stuff and strategies I used that helped me. So the most effective thing you can do if you're trying to study for the ACT and prepare for it before you take the test is take tests. There are so many different brands of practice books that you can buy that have great tests. I recommend just going to a bookstore and looking because you want to make sure it has the answer explanations in the book ready for you. Now, when you're taking practice tests, the most important thing is not the practice test itself. It is reviewing your answers. So once you're done with a practice test, you can go through, you can get your score back, and the score you get back shouldn't be anything to discourage you. It can boost your confidence, but practice tests usually vary in difficulty, and the point isn't the score you get back. So let's say you took a practice test and you got a 25 back, and that's 2 less than you got on the real thing. That's not something that should discourage you. You want to get questions wrong on the practice test. Don't get me wrong, you want to try your hardest. That's something you can review, you can look at the explanation, understand it, and then that's just a little bit more material that you understand now that you didn't understand before you took the ACT. So taking tests and reviewing your wrong answers will boost your score. I recommend circling anything you guessed on and anything you were unsure about, because guesswork isn't going to get you the answer right 100% of the time, and if you look at the explanation, even if you got it right but you were guessing, you will know how to get the right answer the next time. Another thing you can do is the online Kaplan Review ACT class. This is the book that you will get with the class, because I signed up for 3-hour sessions every Sunday, and we would have sessions where we'd go through maybe math and English, and that's it for the session, and then you do like reading and science for the next session, and they just go through. You have a teacher and then you have other students in a chat room, and they'll go through questions with you and give you tips and strategies for each section. It can sound like a lot, but really 3 hours out of your weekend, aren't you going to be binging YouTube in those 3 hours? Come on, girl. You know how it is. So now I'll give you the epic tips for each section. So to start with English, my first tip is read everything. I know you'll be given lots of passages in the English section, and there will be underlined portions that you have questions about, but you need to read all of the text in the entire passage, because by the end of the passage you're going to want to understand what the entire thing is about, how it's structured, and what each paragraph is talking about, because most likely on at least half of the passages you're going to get questions asking you about the passage as a whole. But also throughout the passages you can get questions about the previous paragraph and sentence order. So read the whole thing. It's not going to cost you too much time. If you're struggling with time management on the English section, most of the time that's because you're spending too much time on questions you don't know the answer to, and just studying the content of the English section can solve that for a lot of people. If you know what the answer is quicker, you're gonna have more time. And there's really not too much you need to study for the English section. You need to study commas, less big one for the English section. A question that shows up all over the English section in many different forms is the say it concisely question, where you're given different choices that just have different words, different amounts of words, and different ways to say the same thing. The trick to those is you always pick the one that says it the most concisely, whether that means it has the fewest words, it's not repetitive, it's not redundant. Pick the one that has the words that say what they're trying to convey the most efficiently. And that shows up all over, and that's just a bunch of points you can get easy right there. They are easy questions, and I think people can overthink them, but the ACT isn't one big trick. You shouldn't feel intimidated or like, that was too easy, I'm gonna spend an extra 5 minutes trying to find the trick, because some are just that easy. Now for the math section. First, if you're not finishing the math section on time, of course studying is going to help you. But other than just studying, there's different strategies you can use to save time. Obviously, if you're not going to get the answer and you feel like you're going to be short on time, come back to the hard ones. Each point is equivalent and you want to get to the questions that you can do first. A strategy I used quite a bit on the math section that I think some people don't think about, or for some reason just don't feel like they can do that, is back solving. I love back solving. So this test is yours. All the information you have, you can make use of. So if you have a math question that you have no idea how to solve, you're like, how can a human being solve this question? Sometimes they are made so that you can easily back solve them, where you look at the answer choices first, and then you can get the answer from them, because it's multiple choice. One of the answers is right, and it's right in front of you. So what I do is, if it's an algebraic problem, or if it's a word problem related to algebra, I can take the answer choices and somehow plug them back into the question and get the answer very easily. But really the biggest thing that helped me on the math section is I love math, and I paid attention to math all throughout school. And I just knew how to do every problem because I had a great math teacher. And if you didn't pay attention in math every day, you can always study and you're not behind. Just remember you're capable. Reading section. The reading section is the bane of my existence. The reading section is notoriously the hardest section for a lot of people, followed up by science. And that's because it's hard to finish. The reading section tests how quickly you can read while also comprehending and being able to infer things about the passage. You're gonna want to be a little sponge boy. You're gonna want to be able to read the passage quickly, but also suck it up. Suck up that knowledge. Because once you get to those questions, you want to fire through them. If you have a moment to breathe during the reading section,
You're not doing it right.
So practice, for me, was how I prepared for this section. I took a bunch of reading tests over and over and over because I had to get my reading speed up. I'm honestly not the fastest reader, so reading too slowly destroys your reading score. But the best thing you can do to help not being able to finish the reading section is practice. And once you can read quickly, you'll have more time to analyze the questions, and practicing will also help you learn how to analyze the questions and what they're looking for. Because once you read the answer explanations, you really start to understand how the ACT is written and what they're thinking when they're making the questions. I know almost no one can do it for every single question. I can't do it for every single question. But try to think of the right answer before you see the choices. Because sometimes those boys be tricky. And you might get persuaded or seduced by one of the wrong answers. And if you think about what the answer should be in your head before, it'll help a lot once you see the answers. I know when I took my Kaplan class, I learned a strategy for the reading test to read and take notes on major things in the story and then go to the answers. Or I also learned read all the questions before you read the passage. I couldn't do either of those because it would just eat my time. So that didn't work for me, but that's something that does work for people who have more time, and it helps them remember things and find answers more easily. So that's on you, girl. The science section. All of the information you need is on the page. You don't really have to have taken biology, you don't have to have taken chemistry or physics to do well on the science test. The majority of the science test questions is really graph interpretation, which is easy if you don't have a lot of experience with reading graphs. All you need to do is practice, and once you take some practice tests and you've practiced reading all the different graphs, you good. My science test advice, I feel like, is very bad. Because I got a 35, but the way I got the 35, it's messy. So, oh my gosh, when I take the science test, I don't read anything unless I have to. I'm getting bad advice. I go straight to the questions because typically they are, what does table 1 say about this component and this and how they relate? And I just look back at the table, I go, and then I circle the answer. And it works for me. I'm gonna destroy everyone's lives. If I run into a question that asks about what the experiment means, or how 2 different trials or tests in an experiment are different, then I go back and read and I find the answer. And it works for me. I'm anxious. And then I do the same thing for the passage that always comes up in the science, where you have multiple scientists with different viewpoints. So usually if there's 3 scientists, I'll read scientist 1's viewpoint, go find all the questions about him, scientist 2, find all the questions only about him, scientist 3, find all the questions only about him. And then I'll go back and I'll answer the questions about how they relate to each other. And that's how I swindled the science test. Test day is coming. What should you do? Do not study the day before. You need time to let your brain... If you're like me, you're probably going to be stressed enough the day before and you don't want to take a practice test, not do well on it, and then have an epiphany. Lastly, I think if you're still working on your time management and you want to make sure you get through the whole thing, bring a watch. So the ACT is very strict about watches making noise. Make sure it's silenced and it's not going to beep. If it's going to beep on the hour, your proctor's probably going to let it slide, but it's best if it doesn't make any noise at all. There's like ACT timers where you press a button and then you can start the timer, and there's one for each section. And I've heard stories of people that tried to use those. They're supposedly fine for the ACT. They meet the regulations, but proctors have still pulled people out of their test while they're in the middle of the test because they don't know what they're doing. So I don't know if I recommend that, because I feel like that's taking a chance. Maybe bring one if you do want to buy one of those timers and show it to your proctor before. They'll have to okay you. If they don't, then bring a backup watch. But I brought a normal watch with me and I set it to 12 o'clock, and then I would just let it run through, and I found that easier. It was a digital clock, so then like when the English section is up, online it'll be 12:45. I only actually did that for the reading section, or I tried to, and then it was like 7 minutes in and I saw that I hadn't actually started the clock, and I was just like, I hate myself. Ooh, and pee before, because I know I have stress peas, and I know some people out there also be having stress peas, but in all seriousness, I am not a brainiac, and I prepared for the test, and I learned how to take the test. You can get a 36 if you want to. Don't forget to unsubscribe.